we are going to talk about the Jacksonville Jaguars. 9-8 last year, brought everybody back. Doug Peterson is the coach. It is also his offense, though Press Taylor will be the offensive coordinator. Projected starters are Trevor Lawrence going off the board as the QB 14 on Underdog right now. Mac Jones is the backup, came over from New England. Travis Etienne is the RB 10. Tank Bigsby is the RB 64. Dearness Johnson's also there. Christian Kirk, Brian Thomas Jr. and Gabe Davis make up the offense. Another situation where the rookie is going ahead of the more established guy. Parker Washington is the fourth wide receiver on the team. And Evan Engram. Josh, I'm going to let you get us started. You just wrote an article today. He's going off the board as the tight end 8. I think you think that is criminally low.
To say the least. This guy's been a top 5 wide receiver the last 2 years, led the NFL in targets and receptions by a tight end a year ago. Was the tight end 2 behind Sam Laporta. I think the biggest thing with Engram, people are still latching on to a lot of his early career narratives where he can't catch, he's got alligator arms, where he can't stay healthy because he missed like 13 games over his second and third year in the league. And, it doesn't make any sense. He's played all 17 games each of the last 2 seasons. He's been a top 5 tight end each of the last 2 seasons. Yes, he does only average about 4 touchdowns per season. But if you're compiling as many targets, receptions, yards as he is, take what he's giving you, because Doug Peterson loves throwing to the tight end. Each of the last 2 years, he has been at 20.6% and 26.9% target share to the tight end position. Evan Engram had over a 23% target share last year, and that was more than Calvin Ridley had on this team. This team, the way that the wide receiver room is structured, there is not a single person in this wide receiver room that can easily command a 24 to 25+% target share. Evan Engram can, because he's done it.
That's what we've seen.
Throw this man the football, because twice in Philadelphia, Doug Peterson targeted the tight end position over 30% of the time. They are not shy about throwing to the tight end. Get Evan Engram in your lineups. He's going way lower than guys like Dalton Kincaid, Kyle Pitts, Trey McBride, even Sam Laporta. All these guys basically are one-year wonders at this point in their careers. And yet Evan Engram, who's done it now, not only just back-to-back seasons, he was doing it on a putrid Giants offense. Stop. Just stop. Stop. It's literally all I have to say. Just stop. Draft Evan Engram, please.
And I read your article, so I knew everything you were going to say there. So I'm not even going to counter or even give Chris a chance to counter. Chris, I want to slide into your talking about Brian Thomas. And does your take on Brian Thomas, should that affect Josh's take on Evan Engram? Is Thomas going to step in here and be more than what we're expecting at this point?
No, because they play in two different areas of the field. I mean, Evan Engram has typically worked like the short to intermediate parts of the field. Like, honestly, like since his name got brought up earlier, you could probably call like Evan Engram like the Michael Pittman of their offense, just because like that's really like how he operates, right? I mean, he down the back end of last season, we saw Engram like bust out those like 8, 9, 10, 11 like target games. Whereas like that's where you see he's a volume based like wide receiver, like volume based like pass catcher. Whereas Brian Thomas, some of the I'll say questions about his ability like coming out of LSU, because they run more of that air raidish like type of offense where it's like QB is going to operate like primarily out of shotgun, 3 to 5 step drop, and I'm just going to let it fly. And then afterwards, I'm going to have a wide receiver that has some speed, is able to beat press coverage, and then just like blaze past the CB and catch the ball like 16 to 20-ish yards like down the field. And that was part of Brian Thomas's game. So I think the question was, well, can he actually be something more than a deep threat? Well, we just so luckily happen to have a number of metrics that can point us in that direction. I mean, one of the better ones that I've typically liked to use is going through Matt Harmon's reception perception and seeing like how receivers can operate just outside of the big plays, like the breakouts, the explosive plays that we see on highlights. I mean, and like most of Harmon's research like does indicate that he can be like I would say not your prototypical wide receiver one, like your Jamar Chases, or even just like if you want to go to a different archetype of wide receiver one or X receiver, like let's say going back to like your classic like DeAndre Hopkins like type of build, where it's like the big guy that plays on the line, beats press coverage and wins in contested catch like type situations. I'd say that is more of the bucket that Thomas like falls into, where he for his final season at LSU did primarily line up outside, did primarily line up as the X receiver, the guy that was going to be on the line, like facing like the opposing team's like top corner. So, but still, I mean, he had I think he was over like the 60th percentile in terms of being able to beat like man coverage. So it's like, if you want him to fall into that role, because they lose Calvin Ridley in the offseason, they draft Brian Thomas, and really the only other person, at least from a pass catching or target earning standpoint, that he has to compete with is Gabe Davis. And we know what Gabe Davis is at this point.
100%.
And we know where Christian Kirk also operates on the field. It's like Brian Thomas can go off and do his own thing and essentially wind up out kicking his receiving line currently at DraftKings. I think was also at, well, let me double check that real quick and make sure, because I want to say 750. But that might not be correct. Yep, actually was 750. Right. Yeah. Yep, 750.5 at -105 on DraftKings. And I mean, looking at the last 10 years of data, most of the receivers, the first year, the rookie wide receivers that have eclipsed 750 yards, the minimum target share that I saw was 14 or 15% in order to get you over 750 yards. And you mean to tell me, just to set aside the draft capital argument for Brian Thomas for a second, because he was drafted 23rd overall, if memory serves, but just look at the targets that are available. And I know that vacated targets is not a real thing. Shout out to Peter Howard, but what's the competition there? Where else is Trevor Lawrence, who has traditionally been a guy that is that big game hunter, does like to focus downfield? We saw him taking so many shots to Calvin Ridley, to Zay Jones when Zay Jones was healthy. Yeah. And really, so now you're going to tell me that Gabe Davis is going to be that dude? Gabe Davis is now going to get over 120 targets? No, that doesn't make any sense to me. So 750 yards, right now, I think our projections over at Fantasy Life, again, powered by Dwayne McFarland's brain, they think we have him over 850 at this point, if memory serves.
I was gonna say, I feel like right now a lot of the betting lines are so low on many people.
It's so easy.
I feel like you're just betting on them being healthy.
Yeah, really, and that's the only thing that you have to bet on. But just looking at the opportunity that he just walks into, it's hard for me to see him not being able to do it. And I will say, all right, so I have to say it. I'm just gonna say one thing about Evan Engram. Okay. Pop quiz. How many red zone targets did Evan Engram get in weeks 1 through 12?
Not a ton.
These many.
Oof.
Not
okay. Many. How many did he get once Christian Kirk went down in week 12 and through the end of the season? So a 6-game-ish stretch.
I'll say probably that same amount, doubled in that
61.
What?
So over the 6-week stretch with Christian Kirk down, Evan Engram had 61 red zone targets compared to the 10 that he got over the 12 weeks prior to that.
61 targets? That can't be right.
And this is why we bring
early all of his targets.
And here's the thing: the year before, when people were on Evan Engram, he did all of his good work in the last 4 weeks of the season. So maybe this is a guy who you save till December. Buy him at the trade deadline in fantasy football.
That's what I'm saying. So it's and how much of a requirement tight ends need in order, for touchdowns that tight ends need. Yeah. So it's I get it.
That's incredible. And Jamie brings up in the chat, yes, I understand vacated targets just don't go to the replacement, but they're still vacated targets. This team is going to throw the ball roughly the same amount of time they did last year.
Yeah.
That's 200 between those guys. So.
Yeah.
I mean, my biggest thing, when you're talking about Brian Thomas Jr. and kind of, with the similarities with his game to DeAndre Hopkins, for instance, my biggest thing is I just don't think he's going to develop into that in year one. So I think that his biggest skill set this year is basically Gabe Davis light. It's going out and, getting that, stretching the field, doing the whole big game hunting, right? That's going to be Brian Thomas's game probably for at least the first half of this season until he really starts kind of getting a feel for the offense, how things start working. They're going to lean on the veteran presence, right? They're going to lean on Engram and Gabe Davis and Christian Kirk. Obviously, Travis Etienne's going to have his role. It's 73 targets, I believe, last year. Yep. So, there's there's not going to be a lot of room, I think, for Brian Thomas Jr., at least right away, to be like, all right, I'm going to hit the ground running. I'm not saying he can't do it. I don't think he's going to. But I still, like, I have him right around a 14% target share on the year. That's where I have Brian Thomas. And I don't think that's crazy, in all honesty. I think the biggest thing is going to be how many is he getting deep, right? Like, are they all just deep targets? And he's catching maybe like 55% of them at that point. But, you know, because I mean, we've seen some of these balls that Trevor Lawrence has thrown deep, and they're not always the prettiest. I mean, Calvin Ridley definitely put forth the best effort to try to catch as many of them as he could last year, but only came down with a small handful of them. But I don't know. It's going to be really interesting to see. And that's why I want to lean on Kirk and Engram more so in this offense, because they're the trusted guys that Trevor Lawrence knows. And that's really who I want, at the very least, for the first 8 weeks of the season, until things really start to kind of like shake themselves out.
But Chris is telling you that for the first 8 weeks, Evan Engram might only see 8.
Okay, so that's fine. Give me all the Christian Kirk early and the Evan Engram late. I'll take that too. That's fine.
If you just have both of them, so you just have Christian Kirk like in between the 20s, and then like maybe Evan Engram can do his thing.
See, I'll double stack a tight end, right? I'll get Evan Engram in ADP, and I'll double up with Hunter Henry later. Hunter Henry can be the early guy. Evan Engram.
There you go. See, you already got it figured out.
Big brain right here, baby.
Yeah.
And then I wanted to end the Jaguars talk when it comes to Travis Etienne. And Chris, this is where my biggest bone with the fantasy community is after Etienne's rookie season, all we did was bitch and moan that we wanted him to be more involved in the passing game. And then he gets more involved in the passing game, is the RB3 to end the season, and yet we plummet him all the way down to RB10. And I understand that's not sacrilegious or anything, and there are some really big names that people want to take ahead of him, but what did Travis Etienne need to do to be looked at as this young top 5 running back, but we just don't seem to want to draft him that way?
I could be misremembering, but I do think that they drafted Tank Bigsby to kind of take some of the workload like off of Travis Etienne. And while they tried to do that, like Bigsby's penchant for just having, I don't know, like stones for hands and like having any pass tossed his way. I think he had 4 targets. Yeah, like he had like 4 targets, and then 2 of them like were turned into interceptions. It was like, all right, we'll just get this dude off the field. So I think that's the reason why some people have some trepidation around Etienne, and because it's like, well, Tank Bigsby, he sucked last year, but he should at least have some role in this offense in year 2. Whether that's going to be he works in on like third downs, or if he works in on short yardage or whatever, I still believe that Travis Etienne will have the pass game role. Like, they really ain't no two ways about that. I mean, unless you expect Dearness Johnson to work in that role, which I can't see that happening at all. Yeah. So if he's still got the pass catching role, if he still has the early down like the early down stuff, and he most likely has like the 2 minute work as well, and then we'll see about like the red zone, like, you know, short yardage like type of stuff. But if he really has like most of the components, or he's going to be working in most of the scenarios that will make him like a top 12 RB, and at least has the opportunity of a top 12 RB, then we should be drafting him as such. I mean, last year,
and he is being drafted top 12. I just found it interesting that like Travis Etienne had a lot of hype coming out of college, and then he disappointed rookie year. And like I said, we wanted the passing game.
He didn't play, dude. What are we talking about? Disappointed.
And he wasn't very involved in the passing game when he did play. But then we finally saw it last year, and it's just one of those things where we find ways to nitpick a guy we don't like, whereas I'm like, I'll take that value all day. And it kind of leads to Jamie's question. Do we think Christian Kirk going in the 4th round is too early? The issue for me is if I'm choosing between Etienne and Christian Kirk in any draft, I'm taking Etienne 100 times out of 100. I don't even care what my build is in the 4th round. I'm taking Etienne there. I just see the upside for Etienne, who is going in the 4th round right now, as well, late 3rd, early 4th. I see it as far higher than that of Christian Kirk. Chris, do we think 4th round is too early for Kirk as someone who sees an emerging Brian Thomas Jr.?
No, I think Kirk I hate saying like, hate using the term like in a vacuum, but I'd say Kirk is, I think he's properly priced, just given how like how wide receiver thirsty we are. And given his role, I mean, we can all agree that Kirk is like will likely maintain like the highest target share out of that entire group. So where he's going at in drafts, like I don't have an issue with it. But to your point, Ryan, if I had to choose between like Travis Etienne and Christian Kirk, I mean, who out of like between those two, if I'm just thinking about it like logically, who out of those two is likeliest to outkick their ADP? You think Christian Kirk is going to ascend in like to the first and second round of wide receivers? No. But could I see Travis Etienne by the end of the season, considering he just already freaking did this like last year? Can he wind up being like, can he wind up competing with the running backs that are going in the first round? Yes. So I think in that situation, yes, I think Travis Etienne, like I would say Christian Kirk is going too early, just if you pose it that way. But compared to the other wide receivers that Kirk is being drafted around, I think he's accurately priced.
And Josh, I'll let you answer, but I want to throw one more thing out that I just noticed. 30 wide receivers going in the top 50, 10 running backs, 11 running backs going in that same area. So it kind of skews where you're looking at Christian Kirk versus Travis Etienne with that upside we just talked about.
I just think it's crazy. We're talking about Christian Kirk in the 4th round as wide receiver 30. Like, best ball is just like blown the doors off of like standard redraft, like actual drafting. Because we know it's going to be so running back heavy in those first 3 rounds that Christian Kirk in most drafts probably isn't going to be going until the 6th, 7th, maybe even 8th round at wide receiver 30.
Yeah, because like
when you start getting into like the home leagues and stuff, like
quarterback value is going to get pushed up, like tight end value is going to get pushed up, running back value is going to get pushed up, so a guy like Christian Kirk can fall. Yeah, I'm with you.
But to answer your point, Ryan, like I would much rather take Etienne because literally for the reasons that Chris said, like he finished as a RB3. I've never seen Christian Kirk as a top 5 wide receiver.
So he's
I don't think that's really ever going to happen.
Right. Travis Etienne finishes the RB3. Is what world is Christian Kirk going to finish as the wide receiver 3? He's CeeDee Lamb. Like he's just like what? Like what are we talking about? Right
Exactly.
And love Christian Kirk. He ain't that good.
Like nope. Like he's not that good. I'm sorry.
Shout out to Fizzle, showing some love to Chris, joining the show with us. I think next week,
man.
Josh, or 2 weeks from now.
2 weeks.
As I say, I know you just texted about it. I just didn't remember which shows were falling where. But I think that's exactly the point is I think we're going to see these running backs get pushed up, breaking my heart, because right now I'm just eating that value alive in best ball drafts. Best bets, I'm going to quickly mention these because me and Josh actually have competing bets. So I'm going to come back to these after the Bengals.
Oh, boy.
But we have Christian Kirk over 900 yards. FanDuel has that at -112. That was my pick. Chris mentioned his pick with Brian Thomas. And then Josh has Trevor Lawrence to lead the NFL in passing yards at plus 2,200. So remember
I'm taking
that
big swings with these bets.
Well, I was going to say you have some fun ones, but I actually didn't even know you were going to do that because my next one is Joe Burrow to lead the NFL in passing yards.
I find it interesting, right? If we were at this point last year and any one of us said Tua Tagovailoa is going to lead the NFL in passing, what would you guys have said?
Sure,
I was going to say, I would have agreed with it because you have Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. I figured you were going to see 17 yards a catch on both sides of the field. So I would not have.
And that's fair, right? But here's the thing. What does Gabe Davis do really well? Outside of dropping the football, he gets down the field, right?
You have Brian Thomas and Gabe Davis who might be 17 yards a catch.
So. Trevor Lawrence has a big arm. Doug Peterson has always had a pretty pass-heavy offense. Like, if he's throwing the football 600, 650 times,
100%.
It's not out of the realm of possibilities that this could happen. I think it's just we get blinded by the fact that he doesn't have the Jamar Chase or the CeeDee Lamb, or the Tyreek Hill, that big stud number 1 wide receiver.
Mm-hmm.
Doug Peterson got over a 4,000-yard season out of Carson Wentz, and not one of his wide receivers passed 500 yards.
Yeah.
If Carson Wentz can do that, I'm pretty sure in this same offense that Trevor Lawrence can lead the NFL in passing yards.
Yeah, I think we're in agreement there, Josh, and it's going to come to the point. My point with Joe Burrow is last year, 4,600 yards led the NFL in passing because of how many quarterbacks missed games. The question is, do we need to see it get to 5,000 yards?